It's a very common mistake that we found happens, and we recommend against it. And the reason is that you're better off sometimes maybe having an empty month or a vacancy for a
Wow.
month and losing that month's rent
Mm.
than placing the wrong tenant in your unit.
Okay.
Why? Because the repercussions of doing that can be much more severe, especially in the market that we're in right now. There are thousands of eviction orders backlogged, at the landlord and tenant board. COVID has made that a lot worse than it was before. So the risks that you're taking as a landlord by not doing proper due diligence, screening a tenant properly, are humongous.
Hold up. Computer. Hello, everyone. It's Paul Davidescu from Level Up Mortgages. I'm really excited to have Viler Lika from SingleKey. He's the founder and CEO with us today. Viler, how you doing, man?
Oh, doing great. Thanks for having me, Paul. Very exciting.
No, you bet. And I bet you all the landlords and real estate investors and even some home buyers are really curious how we're going to decrypt a bit of this this black hole of credit score. And there's so much that both the landlord and also actually the home buyer need to know about each other in a short amount of time with a lot of pressure, and COVID-19 does not help. So I'm really excited to hear about exactly what SingleKey does. Now, for starters, how did you get into this industry? We'd love to hear a bit about your background.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. Now, my background is in banking, finance, MBA by trade, and we saw an opportunity. We saw an opportunity that there was definitely a need in the environment where landlords operate. They take on a lot of risk, right? And
Right.
when you think about what are the main risks that landlords face, well, it's tenants that don't pay the rent, damage their property, and who just won't leave, knowing that it'll take a long time for them to be evicted.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes they do prey on a lot of small individual mom and pop landlords, and those are the people that are most vulnerable. Now, when you go to the market and look for ways to protect yourself against these risks, there's really nothing out there. There's no financial product or insurance product that really kind of deal with these type of risks. And basically, delinquent tenant behavior.
Right.
And that's where the light bulb struck for us, right? We were a group of landlords. We've had experience in the market. We knew the rental space really well,
Right.
and thought, wow, I can't believe there isn't some sort of insurance policy out there that guarantees my rental income, even if a tenant doesn't pay.
Sure. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I know. So that's essentially what SingleKey does.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
That's pretty much it. Our goal really is to take the stress away from out of renting for landlords, to take away some of the major risks, help them screen tenants, find that right person, hopefully to avoid those headaches to begin with. And then if they can't, and sometimes you can do all the screening you want, you can never avoid the risks altogether. Then we have a policy, a rent guarantee policy, to really provide you peace of mind even if you do encounter a delinquent tenant.
No kidding. Now, thank you for that. Biggest mistakes that landlords make when they are screening tenants. I'm sure many of them watching have had their issues. They've learned from their mistakes, but there's also a lot of blind spots. So what are the biggest mistakes that you see?
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul, I mean, we've been doing this now for 3.5 years.
Oh,
We've talked to probably thousands of landlords and run thousands of reports. And it's almost this kind of the process of screening tenants, of making a good decision on or recommending whether or not to approve a tenant for a lease. It's almost become second nature for us. But I bet you a lot of landlords out there really that they have questions about this, right? It's not common knowledge. So I'm happy that we have a chance to kind of talk about it now and really kind of give me an opportunity to kind of share some of that knowledge with your audience. Now, in terms of what are the biggest mistakes? The first one is basically rushing to fill a vacancy. And what I mean by that is to basically, you can really get caught up in this market and say, oh my God, my tenant's leaving and I'm going to lose 1 month's rent, and I'm going to get it out there as soon as possible. And the first person that wants that lease, I'm going to give it to them, right? It's a very common mistake that we found happens, and we recommend against it. And the reason is that you're better off sometimes maybe having an empty month or a vacancy for a month and losing that month's rent than placing the wrong tenant in your unit. Why? Because the repercussions of doing that can be much more severe, especially in the market that we're in right now. There are thousands of eviction orders backlogged, at the landlord and tenant board. COVID has made that a lot worse than it was before. So the risks that you're taking as a landlord by not doing proper due diligence, screening a tenant properly, are humongous, right? So this is the time to really focus on screening tenants properly, to really take the time to do all the checks, to look at all the data, collect all the information you need, make the reference checks, before making a hasty decision just because you're looking to lose a month's worth of rent. So that's one. The other one that I see very often, Paul, is that people are emotional creatures, right? Most people think that they're great judges of character, and a lot of people are. So a lot of them just tend to basically meet the tenants in person when they come to a viewing, and then they have a good gut feeling about them, and then they'll move forward with that tenant for the lease without really kind of doing the proper due, without doing a credit check, background check, looking at references, pay stubs, employment information, and that can really get you in trouble. And here's why: because we've come across a lot of professional tenants, and that's kind of the technical term here. And these are tenants that really kind of, they know what they're doing. They know how to take advantage of the law. They know the loopholes. They know how to prey on landlords that are not sophisticated, and get in there and basically pay that first month of rent and then live rent free for the next 6 months, because they know it's going to take you that long to be able to evict them or to go through the legal process. So the way you avoid these guys, and the problem is that these guys tend to be they present really well, right? They come across as very trustworthy, great individuals, but without doing a proper check, without speaking to their previous landlord, without looking at their credit score, without looking at their income information, I would highly, caution against not doing that, and making sure you have the time, or you take the time to make those calls to get some additional data points before making a decision.
It sounds tedious, and it sounds like if I was a renter, I may not get all that information. So perhaps that's what your platform, of course, solves. But it sounds, I don't know how realistic that would be based on how much time people have, and also just the feasibility. So I'm setting you up for the grand reveal.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and yeah, and thanks for that, Paul. So basically, yeah, we do offer a great report that actually does a lot of this for you. We have something that our tenant credit and background check report that we offer at SingleKey, that we sold thousands of across Canada now. It's one of the best reports out there in the market.
Awesome.
It's ready in 5 minutes, right? So you go in there, you invite the tenant, they basically fill out an application form, and we get you all the information that you need to make a good decision on that tenant within 5 minutes. So
amazing.
It doesn't take a lot of time. It's easy to use.
And you have one for us, don't you?
I do. Yeah. Let me actually show you, give you a quick view of what that looks like. And
perfect. Let's have a story here. So I'm a landlord.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's COVID. It's hard to find renters. I find a renter. I've got a good feeling. I've taken your advice and I've said, okay, well, maybe I do bite the bullet for 1 month. Mm-hmm. If I'm not feeling so good about them or haven't done the proper background check. I put in their email to your platform, make a quick account. They suddenly get, I guess, some kind of a form. And this is the report that I'm going to get back, assuming they fill that out.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And there's 3 portions of that, right? It's the form, the rental application form that you fill out digitally online. The tenant gets a text message or email with that invitation. They fill it out, and then we return the answers back to you. When we do that, we also run a full Equifax consumer report and background check and social media scan to go along with that.
Okay, yeah, let's
provide more information. So this is what that report looks like. Once you get in this case, the tenant is John Doe. He's filled out our application form. So we have his personal information in the very beginning. Yeah, we have that's right. You know him as well. We have the income, so gross annual income and bonus and other income. We obviously have their rental history, so the previous landlord, where they lived, their contact info as well. Highly recommend you reach out to them. And more importantly, actually, we ask for 2 employment references. Funny story. We find that it's actually better to reach out to the previous landlord as opposed to the current landlord. Reason being is that they'll give you a more honest answer, right? Because if the current landlord has a bad tenant in their property, they're just looking to get rid of them. So they're happy to pass on a good reference if that's what it takes. The other one is it's very important, obviously, the employment information. So, in this case, it's a carpenter working at this company with information as well as the employer's information. And, especially now during COVID, a lot of jobs are at risk. So we do recommend making those, calling those employment references, making sure that the person works there, that they're on a full-time contract, and that their employment is secure. And then here you have the additional information: car, pet, do you smoke, etc., and the details around that. Now, this is what you saw so far was basically self-report information from the tenant filling out our form.
Right.
Here's where we get into the data from the Equifax report and the background check. Cool. And on the first page, we give you a very high-level view of kind of like all the different databases that we match against and what we've cleared and what we've caught. So we have a couple of records here. We do see that we have a failed Equifax report as well.
Uh-oh.
And if we scroll down, you'll have a high level view of what the credit score is, total debt, any legal items, bankruptcies or collections on the
And
record.
fail is usually under 600. I mean, I know most lenders on the mortgage side won't look at it under 600 unless they're an alternative lender. What do you consider as fail?
Great question, Paul. So now my answer is that credit scores are all relative, right? And it depends on the application, it depends on the population. Renters in general have a lower credit score than homeowners because they don't have any home equity. So for your average Canadian, your credit score is going to be about 650. For a typical rental, it'll be about 630, so a bit lower. So keep that in mind, right? So that meaning that, hey, half of your applicants are going to be below that 630 mark, which is good, right? So anything over 600 absolutely is a good score. Is an okay score. Once you go over 660 or 700, that's a great score in general. When it comes to renters. Our recommendation when it comes to credit score is that it's not the most important thing out there. And in fact, when we talk about our rent guarantee program, I'll let you know that we found that credit scores are actually not as predictive as people think when it comes to paying rent. And the reason is that and the reason it's simple is that if you're a tenant out there looking for a place to rent, right, and you have a lousy credit score, you're gonna have a really hard time. So if you do get that rental, you do get that lease, chances are you're going to be a lot nicer to your landlord than somebody that has a high credit score and has a lot of options in the market, right? So there is a bit of a selection bias in that sense. For us, what we found to be the most important kind of like variable or point of reference when it comes to paying rent, it's rent to income ratio. So affordability, somebody that has high income, the rent is less than 30% of their overall household income. It's great because they, even if they do get in trouble, lose their job, they will have savings aside. They will probably have a good credit score, that they'll have loans that they have access to. So the odds of them being in a very difficult financial, hardship is less likely than somebody with a lower income. So income is king when it comes to screening tenants. That being said, the rest of this information is very important as well. Now, social details, what we do is we actually, collect their Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn kind of links, so you can kind of take a look at their public profiles. We don't scrape any private information, but it gives you a chance to kind of take a look at their lifestyle and get a feel for what that customer or what that tenant looks like. We show you the residential history as well. And now we get into the background check. Now, this is something that not a lot of landlords do. And we, the ones that have seen our report are very quick to use it. Because at the end of the day, if you're putting somebody in your home, you're going to be interacting with that tenant, constantly, answering, right? And you typically, you don't want somebody with a criminal history to live in your unit because they might be more aggressive, they might be more difficult to work with, they might cause trouble. So you do want to know if there's been any charges. In this case, and this is a real report that from one of our customers that we've kind of exactly right. So possession, drug trafficking,
red flag.
Totally, and some details around that. In fact, oftentimes we also are lucky to pick up links to RCMP articles or police articles that are posted.
Link to them, huh?
Yeah, absolutely, because you'll see
like Google on steroids. You're basically a Google for landlords.
Exactly. So what we do, it's more like Google for court records, because we go out there on every province court record and we actually API in there and look for these type of information. A great story around that is that we had we had a great tenant that was a landlord that was renting out her basement. It was her first time, and she found a great tenant she really liked, and she was kind of in a rush to kind of lock him down and sign the lease. And then I recommended running this credit report first, just to make sure.
Sure.
It turned out that 10-year gap in his employment history was because he was in he was in prison for murder charges. All right, and not to say that people don't deserve second chances, but that's something you probably want to know when you're letting somebody in your home.
Wow.
Right. The last part of this, Paul, is basically the credit report. Now, let me point out some of the most important things that you need to look out for when you're looking at a credit report. And, not everything here is relevant. I know that the credit report can be very overwhelming. There's a lot of numbers and data in there. But here's some of the things that I look for. So obviously, the credit score is important. You can see a quick slider here in terms of what's good and what's bad. And like I mentioned, anything above, 650 is considered pretty good, again, a B. And anything below, I'd say 650, or you should be very careful with. We do get some address information that could be helpful to make sure that it matches what they put in their rental application. You do get some employment information. Mind you, not all employers report to Equifax, so it won't be there for everyone. Next, you get a kind of like a high level view. So revolving credit, and you'll see these 6 bucks in every type of credit report, but you'll see revolving credit, which are credit cards, other credit and other debts. These are typically personal installment loans for different purposes. Auto loans, student loans, and mortgage loans are self-explanatory.
Right.
The most important thing when you're looking for this is, hey, what is the overall indebtedness of the applicant? So in this case, it's actually relatively low. They only have some credit cards and fairly low balance there.
Of course.
Right? But hey, if somebody is $50,000 or $100,000 in debt,
Right.
the second question should be, okay, now what type of debt is this, right? And the reason that's important is because $100,000 of credit card debt is a lot worse than $100,000 of mortgage debt, because the interest rate is 10 times higher on that credit card, right? And the monthly payments on that are 10 times higher. The awesome thing about the report that we have is that not only does it show you the balances, it even shows you the monthly payments on that account. So you can do the math and kind of figure out exactly, hey, if this person's making $3,000 a month and they're paying $1,000 in interest charges or interest payments, well, I know they only have $2,000 left over to be able to cover the rent. So that should definitely factor into your affordability calculation. As a better example, I have another one here. Here's an example of an applicant that had many different trades. The awesome thing about our report, it tells you exactly who their loan is with. It's not just like a high level, summary. You see Desjardins, President Choice card. That's a cable bill. What what type of loan it is, the balance on that loan. So, for example, in this case, we have a $37,000 line of credit with Desjardins as a revolving. And then on the next page, you see kind of what their monthly payments are. So $100 a month, $200 a month, and in our new report that we're actually releasing next week, we go ahead and actually summarize all this information for you and put it right on the first page, so you know exactly what their total monthly obligation payments are.
Do a bit of math for them, and so this is super comprehensive. So again, you were saying call to action here is people can go on the site. It's what, $25 per report, was it?
That's it, $25 report, no membership fee, no subscription. It's just pay as you go, and and it's one of the easiest ones to kind of just order. It's ready in 5 minutes, if you guys have any questions, feel free to go to our website and interact with our agent there on the chatbot.
Okay, beautiful, nice and efficient.
Awesome.
Okay, that's great. Moving on, maybe just more to post lease, because I know people have a lot of issues, as you said, with let's say they don't use you. Now they're stuck with a bad tenant, right? Or they do use you for whatever reason. Something goes sideways. So you were telling me before I hit record, you have a really interesting chart that might spook some landlords, but as far as the eviction time to actually get rid of a tenant, this is pretty shocking. Why don't we walk through this?
Absolutely. So like you mentioned, once you do sign that lease, Paul, the next concern is now, okay, well, how do I make, what are the risks that I have if a tenant decides not to pay the rent? How long will it take me to really kind of solve that, right? If I have to evict a tenant, what is that timeline going to look like? How many months of rent am I going to lose, going through that process? Well, what we did is we actually worked with our legal team and we did some research by looking at looking at all the public eviction files at all the provincial courts, and this is all public information. So every time you go to the LTB or the tenant board, they will actually kind of present this information. We did some research and we looked at the steps that basically are involved when you're going through the eviction.
Right.
Well, typically those steps there's a mandatory wait for you to file your notices, wait for the tenant to pay. It's about 14 days to start off in Ontario, and then before you can issue your L1, so order to evict, and then set up that hearing. So that's really the first part.
Well, let's see, October 1st is they didn't pay rent for October the 1st. Okay, great. I wait till October 14th, so I send anything.
Yeah, you got to send your L1 form form on
earliest is October 14th.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. So you have to give them about 14 days to actually, basically pay up on their rent before you can actually file for eviction. And then there are multiple steps that happen after that. Now, the biggest delay, as you can see from this chart, is typically waiting for a court hearing, right? So you send your notices, you file for eviction, especially now post-COVID, where there are thousands of backlogged evictions at the LTB. The wait to get in front of a judge is tremendous. These are numbers pre-COVID, and already you can see that in Ontario, it took about 4 months to really to really kind of process the eviction from end to end.
Wow, that's insane.
Right, and then after you get your eviction order, you also have to go to the sheriff's office and get them to go out there and change the locks and evict the tenants. And that could in Ontario that takes about a month, right? So The good news though is that it's not the same in every province, but in most provinces, you're looking at about 2 to 3 months, for the entire process end to end, and that's if you follow all the steps correctly,
Got it.
and the case doesn't get delayed, right?
So
So that's
suddenly
significant.
$1,000, or suddenly, maybe losing $1,000  1 month to avoid a bullet gives you an ROI of $2,000. Assuming you're charging $1,000 a month, this is 3 months you're losing. So lose one to get to not lose three. I think that might be
Well,
decent. So that's
well,
circling your point.
absolutely, and not just that, but you have to take into account, legal fees, because you're going to have to pay court fees, cherry fees, paralegals, and not to mention all the stress and headaches that come along with having
All-in
to
costs.
really deal with this tenant.
You know the all-in costs approximately?
Yeah, we do. So I think, on average, I'll send you guys a great article that we're compiling around these charts, and we're putting it all together. But you're looking at about $10,000. Now, part of that depends on, hey, what's the rent in your city? You're looking at Ontario. Your average rent's about $2,000 a month, right? We said 4-month wait. That's $8,000. Throw in legal fees, court fees, etc. Now you're easily over $10,000 in losses for your average rental unit, right? So it could really add up.
Yep, that makes sense, man. Well, thanks for that. I guess let's shift gears and kind of start to wrap up. Time's flown by.
Absolutely.
So look, I
Well,
think a lot of landlords. Sorry.
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to mention, Paul, on this
Sure.
topic, and this has become big news now as well. Post-COVID, there's been a lot of changes. So during COVID, we had an eviction ban in Ontario where the landlords were actually not able to remove tenants. And I just had a call yesterday with a landlord that the tenant hadn't paid rent till April, refuses to get a job, and knows that he can't get evicted, so he just isn't willing to pay the rent.
Right.
Luckily, that's changed. So in August, just last month, the courts did reopen. And a Bill 184 was put forth, which allows landlords to actually expedite the eviction process for tenants. And the way that works now is that, you can come up with a plan and say, hey, you owe me $3,000 worth of rent from the last 3 months or whatever, right? We're going to come up with a plan where the tenant can pay a small amount of that, maybe $300 a month for the next 10 months to catch up on rent. That plan is then sent over to the board. And if a tenant doesn't execute on that plan, doesn't actually make those payments, you can go ahead and actually evict them without a hearing. And so that is something that you need to be aware of, which is very helpful. At the same time, the tenant can take this to the LTB and contest it. So there is still a bit of a delay. There's still a lot of risk. Still a good reason to do a proper screening before you get into this. Yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah, that's timely. I'll definitely link to that. And that was last month, the time of this recording. That's nuts. Wow. So that's good to know. Yeah. And again, hopefully things do not get to this point. So a lot of it, people are people. They demand respect, communication. Landlords can be busy, can be neglectful. So, how does a landlord generally keep a good relationship? Just like just like a few bullet points that maybe aren't super obvious.
Totally. Yeah. And I think the obvious are worth reinstating as well, just because a lot of people, especially if you don't have the experience, you want to make sure that you have the best practices in place. Number one is be professional, right? So, a lot of people make the mistake of being way too friendly with their tenant and coming up with a very casual relationship.
Right.
You need to reaffirm to them that, hey, look, your ability to pay the rent affects my financial situation and my ability to pay my mortgage payments, and et cetera, as a landlord. Therefore, we're more of a business relationship than a casual one, right? Now, in doing that, that goes without saying that you need to be respectful, timely, engaging, make sure that you address any questions or concerns that the tenant has, so that they don't have reasons for not paying your rent. At the same time, you want to make sure that you're not overstepping your boundaries. You know the rules, you're staying within them. Lastly, one of the most important things, Paul, is make sure you document all your conversations. I always recommend don't take phone calls from your tenant, especially if you feel like there's any anything that you'd like to document. It's better to use text messages and emails to communicate with them, because that way, because those conversations are going to be very helpful when you do go to the landlord tenant board and file for eviction, as you will have all that information documented. Yeah.
Got it. Good point. I love it. Let's talk about the rent guarantee program. Look, sometimes, really, no matter how nice you are, how professional you are, how anything you are, things happen. Sometimes people just can't pay. So let's talk about this rent guarantee program and how landlords can get some insurance around rent, which is kind of unheard of.
Absolutely. And you're right. Life does happen. People lose their jobs. They get divorced, separated for whatever reason. They may not be able to pay the rent. And the last line of defense is our rent guarantee program. I think we did a good job of kind of talking about all the risks that come along with having delinquent tenants. What the rent guarantee program does is that we've actually partnered with an insurance company here in Ontario to set up a policy that really takes away a lot of these risks. So we guarantee the rental income to the landlord, even if the tenant isn't able to pay, for up to 12 months or up to $60,000. So that way, even if the tenant doesn't pay, you can still cover your mortgage payments, property expenses, and not have to worry about that. Secondly, we cover damages to the unit for up to $10,000 in case there's any vandalism, willful damage. And by the way, this is something that's not covered by your landlord's insurance or homeowner's policy. And thirdly, we take care of the eviction process for you. So we will we will hire a paralegal team to go out there and issue the notices, take the case to court, and go through that process. And we will cover all the legal fees that come along with that as well, which is another source of relief. Ultimately, you get your rent check no matter what. And if there's issues with the tenant, we're there to help you solve it, so we can take away some of the stress and headaches that comes along with that as well. That's pretty much the rent guarantee program.
Wow, very cool. And cost for that and ROI?
Yeah, and we want to be fair. So for what we've done is for our costs is that it's only 5% of the monthly rent, meaning that it scales with your rent. As part of that, you also get a free rent collection that we offer via pre-authorized debit directly from the tenant's account to the landlords. It is tax deductible. So at the end of the year, you can put it against your rental income and get half of that back. And it's the same for everyone. So we don't charge more for low score tenants versus high score tenants. It's a flat fee. As long as the tenants qualify, they're good to go. We can apply towards both mid-lease tenants and new tenants. And if they're new tenants, we need to make sure that we have a credit check from them. We can help you with that, as well as a proof of income to make sure they have enough income to be able to afford the rent. That's all.
I love it. Viler, anything we didn't have time to cover? I know we were rapid fire. Anything you think is a good lasting thought or some last words for real estate investors, aka landlords, to keep in mind if they protect their assets?
Absolutely, Paul. And I'm just kind of thinking about all the interactions we've had with all different parties in the real estate space. So we work with property managers, we work with realtors, we work with small individual landlords. It's a small guy. It's the mom and pop, 1 to 5 property landlord that we add the most value to. And why? Well, yeah, exactly. Why is because, they're not huge. They can't afford to kind of spread the risk across the portfolio of non-payment. They also need help with know-how, with kind of how to navigate the legal system, right, and how to follow the right kind of rules. So that's really who we're targeting. That's who we're here to help. We're helping them find the right tenants with our report, and we're helping them mitigate all their risks with our rent guarantee. If any of your clients, especially in the investor space, they're making that first or second purchase as an investment property to rent it out, definitely get on a call with us. At a minimum, we'll help you find the right tenant and set you on the right path.
I love it, man. Super important. Well, hey, it's been a doozy, man. I appreciate it. I will link to all the things we spoke about. And thanks for your time, man. I mean, definitely it's something people overlook, and it's pretty cool you guys have found a way to bulletproof rent payments.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Paul. This has been a lot of fun, and looking forward to to sharing any additional information with you guys as well.
I love it. And where can people follow you?
You guys can follow us on Facebook, on LinkedIn. SingleKey.com is the easiest place to kind of reach us. We have live chat support there 24/7. So feel free to reach out with any questions.
I love it. Well, Viler, thanks again, man. And for those viewing, and for Viler yourself and your team, keep leveling up your living, man.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Have a great day. Take care,
man. Thanks so much.
Bye.